I always like to start off membership by asking if anyone in the crowd has a membership somewhere, whether that's to the gym, Costco, Sam's Club, just by show of hands. Membership somewhere. Okay, great. So for me, the membership I have that I hold near and dear to my heart is at Costco. With Costco, the great perks that you get, pizza for $1.50, maybe it's the samples, or I just bought a couch unnecessarily. But kind of like membership with CalSTRS, you get these really great perks by having membership at other places. So once someone becomes a member with CalSTRS, they start making contributions, and then they start earning service credit, and at the end they get a monthly retirement allowance with us. So today I'm just going to talk to you first about how people become CalSTRS members and whatnot. So we're going to cover who is a CalSTRS member by definition, and then we're going to talk about the ways employees mandate into CalSTRS membership based on the teacher's retirement law and certain thresholds and requirements. Then I will talk to you about just 2 small positions that will never be eligible for CalSTRS membership. And then lastly, we will talk about the permissive election of membership. And for those of you who were at EAC, I'm sorry, it might be a little redundant, but I've got to let everyone else know. So who is a CalSTRS member? A CalSTRS member is first, it's going to be someone who's working for an employer. So that's all of you here in this room, your COEs, charter schools, community college districts, and so forth. And then that employee would also need to be performing credible service. So that's that list of activities that Karen talked to us about in 22119.5, your nurses, your school librarians, your science teachers. Then that individual also needs to be earning credible compensation for that credible service. Credible compensation, I'm sure you're all familiar. We will go into that, though, a little bit later. We're going to bring Mia back up, and she'll tell you all about it. And then lastly, upon meeting all 3 of these requirements, this individual would either mandatorily qualify for CalSTRS membership or permissively elect, make that voluntary election. And that is a CalSTRS member. Any questions on that? It's pretty straightforward. Okay. So that's who a CalSTRS member is. Next is how employees mandate into CalSTRS membership. So the first way someone could mandate into CalSTRS membership is by being employed in a full-time contract. Anyone who is employed on a full-time basis to perform credible service, they become a member of the defined benefit program the first day of employment. The first day of employment is determined by you as their employer, so that could be the first day that they step foot into the classroom, or it could be the first day that they sign that contract, and that's just kind of determined by you. And then another note here is that multiple part-time positions, you can't add up like a 30% contract, another 30% contract, and a 40% contract to equal 100% contract and whatnot. And I believe 30 plus 30 plus 40 is 100. So that is employment in a full-time contract. Next, we have part-time contracts at a K-12 county office of education or a charter school. So an employee who's employed to perform credible service in a 50% or more of a full-time contract, so 50% up to 99.99%, they become a member of the CalSTRS defined benefit program on the first day of the following pay period. Yes, question. Wait. Question. You're right in the middle, Karen.
So I had a new teacher hire, and she was FTE 1, but she had 2 part-time positions, and they would not let her be a member on the first day of the following pay period. And it wasn't really explained to me well why.
Mm-hmm. So she had 2 part-time. What percentage of part?
They're both 50-50.
They were both 50-50, and she wasn't allowed to become a member?
No, so I thought she would be a member on the first day of the following pay period, but nope, had to back all that out and make her a member the following month after that. And I never really understood why.
That's really weird. So if she was hired like in the middle of the month, the beginning of the month?
Probably, yes, she was
Okay.
late hire.
Okay. I would say, because that seems like a very specific situation, send the documentation and we can review it and see if that was correct, unless Someone else has something else to add? Yeah, because that sounds very specific, and then we can kind of look into
It's
that
a
for
mess
you.
to fix with an editor.
Yeah. I'm sorry about that. Okay. Any other questions about part-time? Okay. So this is for those community college districts here in the room. So if you have an employee who accepts a position under these highlighted education codes, they are what you might refer to as temporary. You might also know them as your adjunct teachers. They are excluded from mandatory membership, but they can still permissively elect. Now, if that employee changes from that temporary position in those highlighted education codes and switches to a permanent position, then they become a member of the CalSTRS Defined Benefit Program the first day of the following pay period. Okay. And next we have substitute positions. So for substitutes, they must perform 100 days of credible service. And then the kicker here is that it has to be for the same employer in the same fiscal year. Once they meet that 100th day requirement, that employee becomes a member of the defined benefit program the first day of the following pay period. So if they meet that 100th day of credible service, they perform that 100th day in, let's say, June 15th, they become a member July 1. And then a note here for this one is that for cash balance participants, they don't, the thresholds don't apply to them. So for those of you who have an offer cash balance, just a note. Question?
I have subs that perform 100 days of credible service in this fiscal year, but does that apply for the next fiscal year?
Yeah, so well, once they become a member, once they hit that 100th day, they become a member, they can't really exit CalSTRS membership. So from that point forward, you would just keep reporting them as a member with contributions and whatnot. And you'll still, the 100th day requirement won't necessarily apply to them because they'll have already, this is just to mandate them into CalSTRS membership.
I have quite a few subs that may qualify for that, but
Yeah.
I was thinking if they started out as cash balance, then when they meet this criteria, I have to push them out or pull them out of cash balance and put them in defined benefits, correct?
No, so this actually, so if you have a cash balance participant, the threshold, we don't need you to count the threshold. This doesn't apply to them. This is only for defined benefit. So if your individuals are cash balance participants, they perform 100 days of credible service. Yeah. Any other question?
When they meet the requirement at the end of the school year, which is 6/30, let's say 6/30, 2018, will they become a member as of 7/1/2018?
18. Yeah.
So it goes to the next fiscal year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But if they met that, let's say if they did like 99 days, they did June 30th, 99 days, on July 1, in the next fiscal year, that's going to reset. So every fiscal year, the clock will reset for counting that those 100 days. If they meet it in a prior school year, then that's different. In July 1, yeah. But that's just knowledge as well. Like if they don't meet the 100th day requirement in that one fiscal year, then yeah, the clock just resets. Yeah. Any other questions? Oh.
And this does not apply to community colleges, right?
I mean, it can apply. No, it doesn't.
Right.
Sorry.
Okay.
I got a giant nod. No. Okay, and same thing for the part-time, hourly, and daily positions. Again, if you have the cash balance participants, they aren't subject to these thresholds. So for part-time, hourly, and daily, they must perform 60 hours or 10 days of credible service. For these particular positions, it's going to be for the same employer in a single pay period. So for the substitute, it was within the same fiscal year. For this one, it's narrowed down to a single pay period. So upon meeting that 60-hour or the 10-day requirement, that employee will become a member of the defined benefit program the first day of the following pay period. And then the distinction here for this part-time, hourly, and daily versus the other part-time positions that I mentioned, these are more like on-call as needed teachers. So maybe you just call them up and, hey, for 10 days we need you to review curriculum or just something along those lines. Are there any questions about the mandatory qualifications for CalSTRS membership? Oh my God. Wait, you all went. I'll go her first.
Okay, I do have a question going back to temp employees, like adjuncts. So if they sign this form, let's say, I don't know, let's say June 3rd,
Yeah.
but they don't start their class until June 16th. We're going by the June 16th date?
So the permissive election, you're stealing my thunder. We are gonna get to it, I swear. But for the permissive election, there was some changes to the law, but if they sign that form, they could technically go back to the 1st of June. The form doesn't necessarily, once they sign the form, it doesn't have to be like when they're actually performing credible service, that first day. But I'll talk about it more, I swear.
Okay.
Yeah. So she was asking about the permissive election. I will touch on that more in a couple of slides, so I'll just, yeah. And then Betty?
We just want some clarification on the substitute positions.
Yes.
My substitutes, I bring them in as cash balance,
Okay.
but many of them perform 100 days.
Yeah.
But you're saying that if they're in cash balance, that clock doesn't tick.
Correct. And is there any other clarification you want to add, Megan? Okay, yeah. So no, it doesn't apply to cash balance participants. And then there was another question here.
How is part-time daily or part-time hourly or daily position different than substitute?
No, so this part-time right here. So this one was those employees, they're in the 50% or more of a full-time contract, 50% to 99.99. So they have a contract. And then for this part-time hourly or daily, it's more of like a on-call as needed type basis. So they just might call up a teacher and, hey.
How are they not substitute?
It depends on how you hire them. So if you want to hire them as a sub, you could. If you want to hire them as part-time hourly or part-time daily, yeah. And she has a question too.
So I had a substitute teacher that came in and did summer school for us. He worked 82 hours,
Okay.
and I reported him, and it got kicked back.
Okay.
And is that because I would have had to report him the following month, which he didn't work anything the following month. He only worked the 1 month.
Okay. I'm going to turn that over to our reporting expert, Beverly.
Can you all hear me over there? Oh, here we go. Thanks, Johnny. Okay, so the difference between subs and hourly daily is pretty much up to you, right? If you consider the person a sub, then the thing that's going to tell our system whether to count up to 100 days or to whether to count 10 days in a pay period is the coding that you use. So if you report that person with an assignment code 54, that's going to tell our system, hey, I consider this person a substitute, and it starts the clock in non-CB units, right? It starts the clock and says, I'm looking for 100 days. Or if you report them hourly, it's going to look for 600 hours, right? Yeah. And if you report them as a 55, that's the assignment code that tells our system, I think of this person as a part-timer, not a substitute. And then if you report them daily, it's going to look for 10 days in the same pay period. And our system's pretty smart. If you report 2 lines for the same pay period from the same employer, it's going to count them together. And if you report them daily with an assignment code 55, it's going to look for 60 hours in the same pay period. What it's not going to do is put them together and say, oh, you've got 5 days, but I see you also have 30 hours. I think that is a winner. It won't do that. So does that make sense? Does that kind of answer the question? Awesome. Okay. Oh, yeah.
Any other questions?
I have a clarification.
Megan has a clarification.
So between subs and hourly daily, so a substitute is really somebody it's not their normal gig. They're filling in for somebody who's otherwise absent from service. And hourly daily might be they're not filling in for another employee that's absent from work. So it might be somebody you've hired on a seasonal basis to kind of revamp your curriculum, or there's a new program and they're doing some startup for that or whatnot to initiate it. So it's credible service, but it's not something that's a contracted position, whereas a sub is somebody who's filling in for somebody who's missing from their actual position. That's kind of a little bit easier way to think about it.
Can we skip back to community college district slide?
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify on the last bullet. So if I have an adjunct who's in a permissive position and they're non-STRS, and then they get hired into like a late start permanent faculty position, they can't be in the DB until the next month or the next pay period?
Oh, sorry, it'll just be the following pay period. Yeah.
Okay, and why is that?
Megan knows. She's our legislative guru.
I did ledge in a past life. So we actually changed the law that way back in 2004, and it was basically an ease of administration for the employers. So back when we would report on, what was it, disks? What did they report on? Floppy disks. It was hard to pull back reporting when people had switches mid-year. So we changed the law to say that if you were in cash balance or working for a cash balance employer and you got a permanent position mid-month, we would just kick over and start fresh the next month. Over time, that administrative burden hasn't really existed. So there's actually we're fishing for an author for a bill this year that will change that to be the first day of employment. So all of your permanent folks will have membership the first day of employment if that bill passes. It doesn't have a bill number yet, but it's something that was in the membership package that was introduced at EAC yesterday.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask on that too, because if I can't make any contributions until the next month, why, if I become a member in February, but I worked in January, why does STRS give me my DB date if I was a non-member from prior years? Is that just for the 2 at 60? Because I'm not getting any more service credit, but you're giving me say I was a non-STRS member, and you're giving me prior membership back to 5-10 years.
Giving you, what do you mean by giving you
So
prior
if I
membership?
go and I am a non-member in STRS right now,
Correct.
and say November 30th, 2015,
Okay.
I'm a non-member all these years. Now I become qualified,
Yes.
and now I'm mandatory, and I have to wait that extra month. But DB, when you go into REAP or you enter it into the system, in my payroll system, it will give me the DB date all the way back to November 30th, 2015.
Okay.
So on one hand, you're giving me the benefit of having the 2 at 60, or the 2, but you're not giving me the credible service, and you're not allowing me to make contributions. So I never understood why that doesn't make sense to me.
That is a reporting thing.
So pension reform allows us to look at the original hire date for creditable service to allow those folks to get credit for the 2% at 60 retirement formula, even though they weren't actively a member yet. It's just the way pension reform was written. So they will get, even though they weren't a member, we will honor the earlier retirement formula because that's when they were really employed to perform service under the system. But their membership wouldn't start until the date that either their election is made, however the membership law works that applies to them. You would use the actual date, and then you would need the contact employer help, and we'll have to adjust the retirement formula date that's in the system. So yeah, it'll click them over as a 2% at 62 based on the date, and then we'll have to go back in and change it. And I believe we might be addressing that in the new system, but for right now, that's the way it works.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you, Megan. Thank you for your questions. Okay. So that's how employees can mandatorily qualify for CalSTRS membership. And then real quick, positions that are excluded from CalSTRS membership. These are going to be exchange teachers or sojourn teachers. They are excluded from CalSTRS membership, and then they can never permissively elect either. So that's that. And then lastly is the permissive election of membership. So if you have non-members, they can permissively elect membership with CalSTRS at any time while employed to perform credible service. You as the employer are required to give your new hires this permissive membership form within 30 days of hire. And then the form must be received here at CalSTRS within 60 days of that member's signature date. And this is one of those changes that went into effect January 1 of this year. And this is also a new change, and so now members are eligible to elect a membership date that is no earlier than the first day of the pay period in which the election is made. And then once membership with a defined benefit program is elected, all current credible service positions must be reported to the defined benefit account. So if they have an existing cash balance account or an alternative retirement program account, that should be closed. Yes, question. He's coming to you.
Hello? Okay. So looking at the 30 days hire, 30 days from hire and the 60 days, how does this go with the 60 and 60 days that was mentioned earlier? Wasn't that?
The 60,
that
I
for a
think that
different
was for
thing?
the ES 372.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
that's retirement
Okay.
system elections.
Okay, so, all right. Thank you.
And so this law corresponds with the permissive membership form. So this is the newest version of the permissive membership form. The first section here is going to be for the member to complete. It's going to contain whether they elect or decline membership. And I believe you all do have a copy of this form in your folder. So it's going to contain where they elect or decline membership, sign date, and then also specify what they want that membership date to be. And then section 2 is going to be your responsibility. And then lastly, we do ask that you submit the form that has a barcode on the bottom. That's for ease of processing and receiving the forms here at headquarters, as well as the most recent revision date of January 2019. Question? Can go back to it.
So I have a question on those dates. For us, we do a lot of hiring for adjuncts over the summer. A lot of the paperwork is filled out and signed over the summer. So I can hire an adjunct in June. They may not start to August or even get pushed back into the next semester, into January.
Yeah.
So how do we resolve that issue when it comes to the first day of the pay period for their membership date? They're not eligible to that. So, because they're dating these forms. So how do we fix that?
So with this new membership form, because they can specify their membership date, so even if you hire them in June, so they're hired to perform credible service, they have the option to future date their membership date. So if they started in June, they could future date that to maybe when their actual membership or actual employment is supposed to start. I know you're saying it sometimes get pushed back, that we don't have control over once they elect that membership date. That's it.
So then are we the ones responsible to elect that membership date for them?
No, so now they have the power to elect their own membership date. They can go back, so if you're hiring them June 15th, that's over the summer, they can go back to June 1. They could go forward if they really wanted to. But if they're not even going to perform any credible service activities, it wouldn't necessarily hurt them even if they just elected June 1 as their membership date. But it kind of gives them the freedom to decide.
So how does that work then when it comes to reporting to having this form within 60 days of their employment?
They're not going to be working though.
Correct. So will that date be incorrect, right?
I mean, I don't think it would be incorrect because you're still going to just specify their membership date, and that's just until they start working. Then you would start reporting them with earnings and whatnot.
Because that's what I'm getting. I get kickback from my payroll office that if it's not dated within 30 days, that we need a new form.
Okay. There's a process in place where if the form is received late here. I can't speak for your payroll office, but it was in the law previously that STRS needed to receive the form 30 days prior or, following the member's signature date.
Which is now 60, right?
But now it's 60.
Okay.
So
So I guess I'm just trying to find the answer to how do I solve this membership date thing with my employer, my payroll
your
office.
payroll office.
Because I mean, I can give the form and they can elect the date they want, but then when I send it over to actually do the paperwork and hire and say, hey, this person's not working for us, we need to start pulling so they can contribute, they're going to say, well, this has been dated over the summer. I can't take this.
Oh, Bev is going to add a clarifying piece.
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's really, we want the form within 60 days of their signature date. And even if they, so if they sign it in June, totally fine. Even if they say, oh, I'm not going to start actually setting my foot into the classroom and working until September or next December, they can make that their membership date, but we still want the form within 60 days of when they signed it in June. So you'll get the form, they'll future date it if they want to, and then you'll just make sure we get it, even with that future date, within 60 days of when they signed it.
Okay.
So, and they could sign it, just like Alex said, within, they could sign it on June 15th and say, make me a member as of June 15th, right? Even though I know I'm not going to put my toe in a classroom or go to a meeting or anything until January, that's perfectly fine. And then they just have to know that if they go do some subbing somewhere else, it's going to be as a member, because we're going to make them, you're going to make them a member, and everything from that point on is going to be member.
So then the best thing for us to do would then be, as soon as I get that form, send it.
Yeah.
Even though they're not working for 6 months, even a year.
Yeah. Yeah, true. Now,
Because we've had that happen. I've done paperwork over the summer, and they didn't start working until the fall of the next year.
That's true. It causes a little problem on our side if they sign the form in June. They say, yeah, I want to be a member, but I don't want my membership to start until a year from now. You send it to us. You've done your part of the deal, right? And you put them on the system with a next year date. And the only problem we have is if somebody comes in, if they go somewhere else in the meantime, and then they've had 6 months to think about it, and they go to the district down the street and they say, make me a member now. Then that other district tries to put on their member date earlier, and they have to call employer services, and and your person has to take them off and move that date. It still works.
Okay.
It's just a little more hassle for everybody involved, but you're both within your rights. So
Okay. And this is specifically for brand new non-members, right? So if I have
they could be existing non-members. They could have been working as a non-member for you for years, right? As an adjunct, especially at a community college, right? Or if you just got somebody who's subbing under 100 days for 10 years, and then one day they get the wild hair, and they get a gray hair, and they say, my gosh, one day I'm going to need to retire. And they come in and they grab the 350 form and fill it out. It's for them, right? It's for anybody who's working as a non-member.
So I'm glad you brought that up too, because again, in my entity, they tell me once they elect into, say they declined CalSTRS at initial adjunct.
Sure.
They work 5 years and they have an epiphany. Wow, man, I've been here 5 years. I need to start contributing.
Yeah.
I want to go to CalSTRS. They've told us no. My payroll officers told me no.
Oh, tell your payroll offices that they must come to the future CalSTRS training.
Yeah, they were supposed to come, but they couldn't. That's what they sent me. So they probably sent the wrong
names.
person. Because I have a lot of questions. Because it makes my job more difficult not knowing what to do. You know what I mean? I feel like I'm messing things up, and I don't like that.
You're not messing things up, no. Yeah. In fact, they can decline it on a Tuesday and come back in on Wednesday and say, I want another one of those. And that one, we'll let you decline 1,000,000 times. And the first time you say yes, you're ours for life. Huh?
Okay. Cool. And then, so once we do have someone that says yes from another entity, right? They're teacher, 10 years, CalSTRS, they come over to us. Do they need to fill out any form for us?
Don't give them another form. Once they've said,
you.
Once you look
Can I
them
get
up
that
in
in an
REAP
email
and
or
it
writing
says
or something
member,
like that? Because
yeah, it's in that directive, that new directive that Megan was instrumental in putting together, that lovely 27-pager. 24. It's a light read. It's 24 pages, but it has lovely scenarios that cover a lot of these things.
What's that directive number?
It's 2018-04, Enrollment in CalSTRS Benefit Program. And it looks lengthy, but it's written, the first two sections are dependent on if you offer CB or not. So if you're a district or you know districts in your county offer CB, then you would only look at one section or the other. They're catered for the CB program because the rules operate differently. Not these rules, but some of the other rules.
We at Berkeley coordinate all our sub-teachers at one desk. I should, just for clarification, get this form from every single sub, whether they elect defined benefit or cash balance, correct?
If you're hiring them, if they're already a non-member, then yes,
Okay.
you should give them the form.
Okay, and then to clarify, let's say, for example, we have a non-member, but they're going into a mandated status, so there is no choice.
Then
At
you
that-
don't need to give them that form.
Then we do
'cause
not give them the
by
form.
law,
So
they have to
it's not-
become a member.
It's only for new hires that are non-members. of
Yeah, so this
DB.
is going to be like those substitutes, the part-time, hourly, or daily employees who have to meet those thresholds, and they might not necessarily ever meet those thresholds to begin with. Then you would, yeah, here's the form. You have the option to join if you want to.